Hey creators, this is a video on how to use CSS classes to style parts of your post. So Erin had posted this in the creators group the other day about switching her site over from Squarespace to WordPress, and she was asking, what are some things that I should do from day one that would make my life easier in the future? And she got some really good advice in the comments, and one of the things that Joel had mentioned was writing introductions to each of the posts. And then later on, I had mentioned about using CSS classes. And so I'm going to explain what that is and how to use it. It's actually super simple. And once you see it, you might love it and you might start using it all the time because WordPress Gutenberg now has a really easy way to do this without even switching over to code mode, which is what we've had to do in the past. So I'm going to be pausing this video throughout the whole thing, so that way you don't have to see me work live to do things, and I can make it a little bit quicker. Starting right now, I'm going to pause it, pull up an example, and that's how I'll be doing it for the rest of the video, just to make it go quicker. Here's one of my more recent articles on Travel is Life about the polka dot coin, which has just blown up recently, by the way. I'm really glad I got into that coin. You'll notice at the beginning, I've got my intro sentence here, which is bigger than the rest of them. I've also got my article contents, which I use smaller text. It's in a yellow background. It's got margins on the left and the right. So basically, I styled this article contents and I styled this differently than the default style of the rest of my post. I'm going to show you how I did. Now keep in mind what I'm about to show you. It's actually even easier to do it than I do it. I just do things in kind of an old archaic mode because that's how I like to do it. So I write all my blog posts in text mode using the classic builder. I'm going to show you how to do it in Gutenberg mode. So you see here I got P, that's paragraph, class equals subtitle. And then over here I've got div class equals TOC, table of contents. And then within that I've got UL, table of contents. Basically, I style the whole thing, table of contents, and all these different unordered lists, and then the individual list modes. Now back here, where I do my CSS styling, you can see I've got P dot subtitle. So on this side, I put P class equals subtitle. And over here, I've got P dot subtitle, which the dot equals class. And all I'm telling it to do is make the font size 120% compared to whatever my default 100% font setting is. And then my margin bottom is 20 pixels. So back to the front end, you can see that my text is bigger, 120%, and underneath it, I just wanted to add a little bit more space between the article contents if I had that, or the next sentence, and so I just added 20 pixels of space. And if you've ever used the Chrome inspection tool, you can see that when I inspect that paragraph, there it is, P class subtitle, and over here, the CSS is reading it as font size 120%, margin bottom. Next, I've got the table of contents, which I house into a div. You can see I've got the background as a yellow. I put padding on the top, bottom, left, and right. I also put a margin on the bottom so I can add some more space in between the table of contents and the next paragraph. Max width 720 pixels because I don't want it to stretch across the whole width of the browser on desktop mode. It doesn't matter for mobile. Anyway, this part gets a little bit much, and I'm not going to show you how to do all this today, but I just wanted to show you how the CSS class on the back end, subtitle, table of contents, how I can stylize it in my custom CSS on the back end, and how it relates to what you see on the front end. Now I'm going to switch to Gutenberg and show you how to do this. Okay, so to show you how to do it, I had to switch to a different website of mine because I don't use Gutenberg on Travel is Life. So I'm switching to my test website that I use. So here's a quick post that I put together about how to use CSS classes to stylize your blogs. This is the introductory sentence. If I come over here to block and I scroll down to advanced, they've got they've got two things. The anchor is if you want to make your own table of contents, so I could call that intro. That's how, when you click on the table of contents, it jumps you down to different parts of the page. That's what the anchor is. Then down here, I've got the additional CSS classes. So I'm going to call this subtitle, intro, paragraph. You can call it whatever you want. We could just call it intro. I'm going to hit save. Now I jump back to my theme and I find the custom CSS. I'm using Divi, so for me, it's in the general settings. Yours might be somewhere else. Oftentimes, if you go to Appearance, Customize your theme, you'll find custom CSS in there. If not, just Google the name of your theme, custom CSS, to learn where to input this stuff. So again, this is a dot because it's a class, and I call it intro. I add a bracket. It automatically adds the closing bracket, and I'm going to make the font size. I can do 120% like before. I could do 32 pixels. I could do 1.8 EM. There's all these different ways to classify the size of text. So to keep it easy, I'm just going to use 120%. That way, it'll change as I change my font size through my regular settings. It'll automatically adjust this as well. Million ways to do it though. This is just a simple way. So now when I switch back to the front of the website, sorry about the ads. This thing is just littered with ads, this website. But anyway, here's the title. Here's my first paragraph. You can see it's now bigger. Now, font size is just one of many CSS elements that I can stylize. So here I've added font size 120. I put a background color on there. I added padding. I put a bottom margin. I made the text bold. So if I switch back over to the front end, there it is. Now, the reason why this is important is because here I've stylized the class intro one time. And then in the back end of my website, when I'm writing the post, I've got a class called intro. So moving forward, if I wanted to, every time I write a post, I could just click on that first block, call it the intro class, and every single post is going to have this. So in the future, I decide that I don't like the background, or I've decided to change the colors of my theme and I want to go with a different background color. I can just change the intro right here, hit save, and it's going to change it on every single page, not just this one. So that's the benefit of using CSS classes, is that you get to just input the class name one time and it'll change it in the future across all of your posts, as opposed to within Gutenberg simply styling this one post and making it bold and making the text bigger and whatnot. You definitely don't want to do stuff like this. You don't want to use headers to make your text bigger, because now Google's going to think that you're just trying to make the font size bigger, but now Google thinks this is a header, and it's just a misuse of these things right here. So you want to keep it regular paragraph text, and hitting bold isn't a big deal, but you know what I'm saying. It's just ideal to use CSS classes. Now let's look at one more example that you might find handy. In this post, I've got, while you're here, check out the rest of my posts that work from somewhere. This is what I'll call in-post announcement. Save that. So in the back, I've created a new class, dot for classes, in-post announcement, open my bracket. I put a background color. I put a color, which references the text color. I put padding on it, and I put a margin above and below it to add space to it. And when I come around to this side, refresh the page, and here's what I've got. While you're here, check out the rest of my posts that work from somewhere. I forgot to make that a hyperlink, but the point is this is now an in-post announcement is what I call them. You can call them anything you want to, but maybe there's something you want to, like a section of your blog where you want to reference other posts. Check out my other post at blah, blah, blah. Maybe you want that stylized. So you can create a class for it. Maybe you call it like other post class or something like that. And then you can, in all your posts throughout the places where you link to your other blog post, to your related blog post, you could make them the same color. And then again, in the future, if you want to change the color, change the font size, change the background color, you can just do it right here in the text. So one last thing I wanted to show you is, like, for example, with the intro paragraph, you could just come over here to the block settings and you can change the colors of it. You can change the size of it and style it. That's fine. I mean, you're doing the same thing. The difference is that you'd have to go back to this particular blog post and change it, as well as every other blog post that you had an introductory paragraph. You have to come in, highlight it, change it back to black, change it back to the default size. Whereas if you use the CSS method and you just simply call this your intro paragraph, for example, lost it. I guess once I started stylizing it, I lost my intro class. But yeah, the difference is that now I can just change it all at one time. So hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, drop a comment. But I think that once you start using CSS classes, even if at the beginning all you did was just label them, and then you said, you know what, this part's a little bit over my head, I'm going to dive into learning CSS another day. At least if you start labeling your intro paragraphs from day one, when you're ready to jump into CSS, then you have all your CSS classes already established within your blog posts. And CSS is not overwhelming at all. Look at this. Here's 4 of the main 10 stylizing tools that I use with CSS. The font size, the color, the background. Beyond that, what are you really going to do? I mean, you can go crazy with CSS and make animations and do all sorts of stuff, but I think for most of us, we're just going to change the colors, the background color, the size, and maybe the font itself. Maybe I want to use a different font family for the intro paragraph than I do for the rest of them. But I mean, that's like 7 things. I reference Google constantly when I'm writing CSS. I'm like, wait a minute, how do I make it bold? Just Google font bold CSS and it'll tell you real fast. So anyway, that's how to do it. Hope that helps. Next video I'm going to do is how to do the Thirsty affiliate plugin.